Okay.
No. What makes you think it's okay?
Because I said so.
Because.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, welcome back to the insanity of our house.
Yep.
We're not on the stairs today, though.
Nope.
We're actually in a room on a flat floor.
We're not in the living room either.
Chairs.
Anyway, so we talked in our last two videos about the arguments for the existence of God. And there are certainly a lot more things along those lines that could be discussed, and you can dig deeper into those things. And if you've got questions or comments or anything, we'd be glad to see those and hear those and talk about them some more if there's something else that you want to talk about. Today, though, we're going to actually start getting into the world religions, and we decided
We did.
We did decide.
We did this collectively, as a group,
Did we?
all together, unanimously.
Yeah.
Although there was some dissent.
Wait, that's not unanimous. If there's dissent, it's kind of the opposite of unanimous.
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Okay then. Well, anyway.
Stop making noise with your mouth.
Yeah, you're like really loud.
Okay.
Right before we start the video, he decides to put jawbreakers in his mouth. Not a very Christian thing to do. Which reminds me, we were going to talk about Christianity first. So the Christian religion, the reason we chose it first was not, what we did, we looked at the list of the number of adherents that each one had, and we're just like, okay, well, let's just go.
That's a fun word.
From glue, the biggest down. So we thought we'd start with the biggest group, which, according to the sources that we could find, is Christianity. The numbers will vary somewhat, and there's some confusion perhaps about that, but basically it's about 2.4 billion that claim Christianity as their religion in the world of just a little over 7 billion. So that's a pretty good chunk of the people that claim to be Christian.
Quite sizable.
Quite sizable. Now, if you search for what do Christians believe in Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo or whatever, if you search for it, you will get a lot of different answers. So if you had to guess what Christians believe, what do you think would be, what's the number one thing probably that most Christians would at least agree on?
A God exists.
Well, yeah, we kind of covered that with religions in general. But what
you said,
okay,
the most basic thing.
So
what's
what's the most basic thing that Christians would believe that would be unique to Christianity as opposed to other religions?
The world was created by one singular God.
A lot of religions may believe that.
I
Judaism,
was
for
going to say
example.
in 6 or 7 days, but some Christians don't believe that either.
Well, but what is it that makes Christians believe it, that something that's different? What makes them Christians versus Muslims or Jews? I mean, Jews and Muslims believe in one God who created the world as well. So what makes Christians different? What makes them unique?
They believe that Jesus
a Mexican
was what?
Jesus.
Stop. They believe that Jesus was a eternal being.
Okay. They believe Jesus was an eternal being. Perhaps.
They believe he is, the Son of God.
Most probably would agree with that. it's kind of sad that I mean we're trying to find the most basic things, and yet we're like, well, some of them do, and most of them do. I think probably one of the most basic things is that they believe that Jesus is the Messiah, their Savior. Now, there'll be disagreement. That's the difficulty. There's so little that they can agree on. So,
can you name a branch of Christianity that considers Jesus to be the Savior but not the Son of God? Since that's basically the distinction you just made.
Well, if it, and again, part of that depends on who you consider to be Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the groups that claim Christ as Savior are considered by others as cults and not Christians. So I think the Jehovah's Witnesses would probably be one group, which again, some people don't consider them Christians at all. Mm-hmm. Some say they're a cult, but they claim to be Christians. But they do not believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Not in the same unique way that others do. I mean, they believe he's a son of God, just like we're sons of God, and we all can be the children of God, that kind of thing. But it does get very diverse, and that's one of the difficulties. And when you try to nail things down, and try to nail people down to, okay, what can we say that everybody will believe? Even, and of course, there are. Well, let's start here. Christianity, basically Christendom, as it's sometimes called, is broken up into 4 big branches. The biggest of those, the biggest one is Roman Catholic. That is half of all of the people who consider themselves Christians.
That is quite a lot.
Yeah, that's half. That's 1.3 billion people on Earth are Roman Catholic. Now, that's not to say that all of them believe the same thing, even though they're supposed to.
Very true.
Because they very specifically say, what the church says and what the Pope speaks when he's speaking for the church and for God, basically, goes. And yet, there's still a tremendous amount of difference among people who consider themselves to be Catholic as to what they believe. But that's half of them. The next biggest group is about 37%, and they're what's known as Protestant. And you can look up the Protestant Reformation and study that a little. Began, most people would say, really with Martin Luther. He was the real catalyst of that.
Now, isn't it basically that whoever isn't Catholic is Protestant within Christianity?
Well, no, because there are at least 2 other groups. There is the Eastern Orthodox Church, which has about 230 million members, and the Oriental Orthodox, which would be Asia, further east than the Eastern. So you've got the Western Catholic Church, which is the Roman Catholic Church, and you've got Eastern Orthodox, which generally covers areas like Russia, Ukraine, other areas in that region there in the Middle Eastern side. Greek Orthodox is in there, and so you got each nation kind of has its own branch of the Orthodox. But then there's the what's called the Oriental, or it's the Asian Orthodox Church, which is even further west, and that's about 62 million.
Okay.
To put that one in perspective for our American watchers, listeners, whatever, If you're from America, 62 million is a bit bigger than the Baptist Church in the United States. Baptist Church in the United States is about 55-ish million people, and so this Eastern Orthodox, not the Eastern Orthodox, but the Oriental Orthodox, the Asian, the further Far East Orthodox is bigger than that a little bit. So you can kind of get that picture if you're familiar with that. Of course, the Baptist Church, like a lot of others, would fall into Protestantism. So in the United States, there are some Orthodox churches, Eastern Orthodox churches. There are not a lot of them. And so most of what you will run into in the United States is going to be either Catholic or some branch of the Protestant movement, which is split into a million different categories.
Yeah.
I mean, we could sit here all night listing them. I've got a book this thick that lists all the different denominations, all the different names of all the different divisions of churches in the United States. And I mean, it's hundreds of them in there. It's not literally millions. It is hundreds, though. And there was something that said there was like a new church was started every so often, like every month or something. There was another new one.
Yeah, did you know, fairly recently, actually, they have started an actual Jedi religion.
The Jedi religion?
Because,
well, why not?
In Star Wars,
I don't think they're Christians.
The Jedi were, like, it was basically a religion, and that's a thing now.
Doesn't surprise me. Well, I mean, when we start talking about how many different religions there are, that gets to be quite a list, too.
Yeah.
But even within what is called Christianity, there's a huge division of what people call themselves and consider themselves to be. Some things are similar, generally speaking, and that's, I kind of hate to use generalizations a lot of times. I don't want to stereotype, but we're going to have to stick to some generalizations to some degree, or we won't be able to cover anything really. So, generally speaking, Christianity will claim one God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is why it is referred to as an Abrahamic monotheistic religion.
Yeah, that was a fun word.
Yeah, Abrahamic monotheistic.
Abram has my hammock.
Abra has my hammock. So there are, interesting. We'll also look at Islam. Islam is another religion that traces its roots back to Abraham. And of course, the Jewish religion also traces its roots back to Abraham. So Abraham is responsible for those three, and possibly there are some others that might be related in some way to him. But basically, they believe in following the teachings of Jesus. They generally believe that he is the Christ or the Messiah, that he was specially chosen.
Now, might want to explain Messiah, but...
Yeah. Well, Christ and Messiah are both two different words that basically both mean the anointed one, the one who is anointed to be either priest or king. In this case, he's anointed to be both, according to the Bible,
and
the New Testament of the Bible.
That somewhat translates to our word for Savior.
It's related.
Anointed one is similar to Savior.
And Jesus is actually the word that more closely fits with Savior.
Yes.
He was to be called Jesus because he would save his people from their sins, was the idea. Christianity is pretty diverse, but generally, they are going to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. That he died on the cross and rose from the dead.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't mean everybody believes that. and they are, if you actually look at what Christians hold to be their scriptures, which is the New Testament of the Bible, and also the Old Testament, they call it, of the Bible, but particularly the New Testament, it's very clearly portrayed that Jesus died and rose again. And in fact, one of the most famous leaders in the early movement of Christians was an apostle Paul. An apostle is one who is sent by God, and he was sent to teach and preach throughout the world. And his idea of what the good news that he was teaching and preaching was that Jesus died, was buried, and rose the third day.
Mm-hmm.
That was how he defined his good news that he was preaching. And so I'm hard pressed to understand how someone can say, I am a Christian, I'm following this Jesus Christ, and then not believe that most basic idea. And yet there are a sizable group of people who call themselves Christians, but who do not believe that Jesus rose from the grave. They believe that he symbolically rose from the grave through his apostles and disciples continuing to teach about him.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically he lived on through them and in their teaching, rather than that he actually physically came back to life out of the grave. So that's, it's kind of one of those things, however, where the entire basis of the Christian religion in the first century, after the time after Christ's death, after Jesus' death, is based on that very idea. And so I'm very torn as to how you can deny that most basic idea and yet still say, but I'm a believer. Believer in what? You're believing in a guy who's dead and in the grave, even though he said he was going to rise again? Even though his followers said he rose again? What does that make them? That makes them all liars. If they're liars, why would you listen to them?
No matter how fair and kind of a view as we will try to take with some religions and some branches of some religions, there is at many times a lack of understanding and research and simple knowledge in a small group of people, or even a large section of a specific religion or religious group, that if they did have all the knowledge that they should have, they would see that it just doesn't fit quite right.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where you there have to be some basic standards for how you define something, and I think it's safe to say that in order to be a Christian, you've got to believe Jesus is the Christ, or you're not really a Christian. And believing him to be the Christ includes believing that he died and got buried and then came back to life. And if you don't believe that basic thing, you can call yourself a Christian all you want, but you don't believe the most basic thing. I mean, if I say I'm a mathematician, but I don't believe that 1 + 1 = 2, the mathematicians, for the most part, would laugh me out of the room, because that's a very basic thing. Now, I know you can get into theoretical mathematics and all sorts of stuff where they try to, try to show that, and I mean, I can prove to you that 3 + 5 = 1, but that's a whole different issue. But, there are certain basic principles and certain basic facts that have to be accepted in order for you to fit in a certain group. And one of those obviously is that Jesus died and rose from the dead in order to believe that, in order to call yourself a Christian. Now, there are some who may take Jesus as a wise teacher and try to believe some of the teachings that he taught and that were recorded by those who heard him teach them. And they can do that, but that doesn't make them Christians.
But even with that, you gotta love the way C.S. Lewis, I believe, put it, where either Jesus is crazy, evil, or Son of God, but he can't be like just a good teacher. You can't take just some of what he said and be like, oh yeah, this is good, because he himself said that he was the Son of God. And so either the guy was just totally insane to believe that he was the Son of God, he was a terrible person to say he was the Son of God, and
or
be
he
lying.
was a myth. Some people take that.
Some
that
people say he was a
he
myth.
wasn't a real person.
That
It's
he
something
wasn't
that people
real.
wrote,
Mm-hmm.
made him up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or he was real and he was telling the truth. And those are your four basic options with that.
Yeah, the teachings of the New Testament, particularly the first 4 books of that New Testament, the Gospels, don't leave room for the idea that he was just a smart guy who was teaching people to live better.
Yeah. No.
They don't leave that as a real option. I know some people try to take that. And it's not to say that he wasn't teaching wise things. He was. He was a wise teacher. But that's not all he was. Some people saw him as a prophet who was one who spoke for God and prophesied and even foretold things of the future. And that's true too. He was a prophet. He did tell things of the future. He did speak on behalf of God. But that's not all. He doesn't allow for that either. So we really get into that real pickle where we either have to throw him out completely and then throw out everything surrounding him as far as the teachings around him, or we have to say, well, the teachings were made up, and in that case we have no idea who or what he really was. Or we would say he was a crazy guy, but maybe he struck a note of truth here or there. Because I mean, even somebody who's insane can say something that's right sometimes.
Yeah.
And so maybe he wasn't really the Son of God, and all that stuff's crazy, and he didn't really die and rise from the grave. But hey, every once in a while he hit on something that was pretty smart, even though he was crazy. Or we have to take the idea that he really is who he said he is, and then we have to deal with what do we want to do about that.
Yep.
But you can't have it both ways. You can't like him and yet not accept everything about him. And that's the difficulty that a lot of people who call themselves Christians, but they're unwilling to accept him completely as the Son of God, and as having been born of a virgin, and as having died and risen from the grave and ascended back to heaven, and that he's coming back again. And if you don't accept all of those things, you're not really following. We're gonna dig some more into the different groups within Christianity, because we really didn't get to talk about them much at all. Just kind of introducing this concept and these different.
Yeah, y'all can't see it, but he's got an entire couple of pages over here on church history, on when they split and what caused the split and differences.
I don't even.
So much information.
We're not even going to get into all of that.
It'll take us an hour to go through it all.
No, it'll take more than that. It would take way more than that. This is, and this is just a little. I mean, what I literally did was just went and pulled some of the basics off of Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I haven't even started to. I mean, I taught a 13-week class on church history.
They teach,
in the United States.
They teach college level classes
For an entire semester.
entire
Yeah.
semester
Sure.
on church history of just the Christian church, just this single branch of religion.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, sometimes they teach even more. I mean,
yes.
they'll teach, if somebody gets a degree in
Hmm.
church history, religious history of the Christian religion, I mean, that they're taking classes and classes and classes on that.
And so with these videos,
We're
There
scratching
could-
the surface.
yes, there's so much here of history and differences and similarities and stuff
Yeah.
between all of these different religions.
And we're trying to keep it simple and yet at the same time pique your interest so that you can dig deeper and find out more about these things.
Is that about it?
I think for this one, because we're going to have to come back again
Yes.
to this topic, and we'll probably spend several sessions on several of the different world religions, because, I mean, they got a lot going on.
Yes.
Christianity's not the newest by any means, but some of them have much longer histories than Christianity does. I mean, Judaism had been around for 2,000 years before Christianity came on the scene. Others have been around for a good long while. So, Abigail, you were very quiet through this whole thing. Is there anything that you wanted to mention before we'll have to definitely get you involved more next time.
I'm going to have
Ask
to
you
sit
some
on
questions.
the next one so that she can talk.
I'll sit out and let you two of you
No.
talk. See where that goes. Got any comments, thoughts about some of the? I mean, and we can deal with some things in depth later, but
No, I'm just waiting for us to get to the Protestant stuff because I have a lot about Baptist things.
you know, okay, because you have
Yeah.
friends and that know. So you got.
They're
some thoughts.
always debating stuff, and it's
Yeah.
kind of annoying, but kind of helpful at the same time.
Well, and that's it. There's a lot of debating that goes on within the Christian religion, and it's kind of sad because one of the things that Jesus wanted was for all of his followers to be one, and yet they're not. So, all right. Well, we will continue, and we'll get into that some more, a little bit deeper and deeper as we go. Hope that at least this wet your whistle for a little bit of what's to come and helped you get into knowing a little bit about the Christian religion. And we're now turning it into a hairstyling video.
It
So-
doesn't do anything. It just
No.
goes.
Yeah.
His hair is like, it's like plastic. It's like trying to fix the hair on a
There's a reason I
doll
don't. There's
or
a reason
something.
I don't bother trying to fix my hair. It's
It does
because
what it
it
wants.
it doesn't work.
does what it
Yeah,
wants.
you're
Like
not
this.
No.
you're not going to help anything.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.